We are at the Fletcher Free Library for Ward 8 for the town meeting day in Burlington.
Here we have candidates Allie and Hannah posted outside, and we're curious to see how voting goes.
So what brings you out here today?
Yeah, my name's Allie. I'm a student here. I'm also a social worker in the community. You know, like we're out here fighting for like climate justice, housing justice, like mental health, public safety, racial justice, all that stuff. I've been down to testify at City Council about a couple issues sort of in my social work capacity. And yeah, kind of just got involved that way. Question 5, which removes like stigmatizing language around sex work from our city laws. I think that's important.
Number 5 on the ballot. And concerns about decriminalizing pimping and brothel owning and sex buying in Burlington and what that means sort of for all of Vermont, for vulnerable people in Burlington, and sort of the bait and switch that this was something that came about as an archaic and offensive language change, which we agree that the language is archaic. And we also support decriminalizing those bought and sold in prostitution, but holding pimps, brothel owners, and sex buyers accountable.
So hi everybody, my name is Saja Mughali, and I am a write-in candidate for Ward 8 for the Burlington School District. First of all, the first thing is, in Burlington right now, there is no Burlington High School anymore. The school is closed and shut down, so every student in the Burlington High School has to go to the mall downtown to teach and study. And that is a big problem right now because who wants to like study in a mall? And so yeah, like the first thing probably we're gonna do is like vote for a new budget so we can reopen the school and build it. And that's the most important thing, of course.
I'm collecting petition signatures for 2 charter changes. One is going to expand direct democracy in Burlington by expanding the right of petition to include changes to the City Code of Ordinance. And the other is in support of creating an independent board that could investigate and discipline police officers accused of misconduct. It is your civic duty. It is the way you participate in politics and do your thing. And with Proposition 0, we're looking to expand that to make it even easier to participate.
I want to make sure that as many people vote as possible. I want to make sure that people are like informed about what they're voting on, and more importantly, or most importantly, inform them that there is an election today. Just knowing that local politics is really important, that like what happens here and who wins this race and the other local races will dictate things like housing policy in Burlington, will dictate things like parking policy, will determine how our parks look and parks and recreation and many other important issues, and these are issues that affect all of us.
I'm just exercising my right to vote. I'm mostly concerned about city councilor for my ward. I'm going to be voting for Allie House.
Wonderful. And why is that?
She came to a club meeting of mine, and I met her, and she was very nice, and I really liked how passionate she was about the issues that she cared about, and I thought someone like that would be good to represent me.
We are at the Fletcher Free Library for Ward 8 for the town meeting day in Burlington.
Here we have candidates Allie and Hannah.
Thank you very much, Jordan Mitchell, who is there in Ward 8 with students from the Community News Service. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Town Meeting Television's annual town meeting coverage. I'm Mark Johnson, along with Diane Meyerhoff. We're going to be bringing you results tonight from 5 communities here in Chittenden County: Burlington, South Burlington, Winooski, Williston, and Essex. We're going to also be bringing back tonight our coverage with interviews with some of the candidates. They'll be coming through the doors here, and we'll also be talking with them about some of the big issues that we're going to be talking about tonight as well. We're going to begin and talk about what's going on in the city of Burlington. The balance of power on the city council is at stake. We have 8 of the 12 seats on the city council were up for election today. 5 of those were contested races, 3 were not. In South Burlington, we had 2 incumbents that were being challenged. In Winooski, really just a great story of democracy in action. 7 candidates vying for 2 open seats. Also, a really interesting proposal there with non-citizen voting. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. In Williston, we're seeing, again, another sign of the great growth that has happened there over the past few decades. At issue there, one of the big issues is whether or not to go from an all-volunteer fire department to a paid professional one. In Essex, where that we have heard for decades now this back and forth discussion of merging the town of Essex and Essex Junction, that has really been in play. And we're going to begin in Burlington tonight with these highly contested races, which a lot at play. Also in Burlington, a number of money questions. There is a city tax increase proposal, a school tax increase proposal. There are also two other money issues, one involving a bond, and we're going to get into the world tonight of tax increment financing. So buckle your seatbelts for that discussion. We'll begin tonight in Burlington. Diane, great to be with you again. And what's at stake in Burlington tonight, and what are you keeping an eye on?
Sure. Well, as you said earlier, the balance of power is indeed at stake. There is some discussion that some of the seats that are progressive seats right now might become Democratic seats or independent seats. And we're especially looking at Ward 8, which we saw at Exit Voices from. We call that the student ward, if you will. And that is an open seat. Jane Stromberg, the progressive, is not running again. So we have a progressive candidate, Allie House, and a Democratic candidate, Hannah King, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. So it'll be really interesting to see two newcomers, recent UVM grads, to see if that seat indeed goes from progressive to Democrat, which will change who really pushes the agenda forward into the council in April.
And why is it that there are three people that are not running this time around?
Well, various reasons. Some just the enormous amount of effort and work it takes. It's difficult to have a job, a regular job, and also do council, the committees, and all the public meetings that are involved in council. And there's also, this was a really tough year. There was a lot of divisiveness. There was a lot of acrimony at meetings. Some people felt pretty uncomfortable about their own personal safety throughout the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, there are even cases where members of the audience were yelling at one another, yelling at city councilors. We've also had protests, one at the mayor's private home, also at the home of one of the city councilors as well. I think people are feeling a little intimidated. Absolutely. And, we tend to forget because it seems like it's been a while now. But remember, those were some really tough periods in the beginning of the pandemic as well, and people protesting against the pandemic rules that were being put in place. And that could happen again. Yep. Right? Yep. We'll get back to some of the other key races that we're going to be watching tonight, as well as a discussion about some of the issues. First, we're going to head over to Studio B. We're happy to bring back that feature of the program, and standing by there to talk about more what's going to happen there. Emily Brewer is there with Lauren Glendavidian.
I am so excited to introduce Emily Brewer to you. Emily is going to be reporting from Studio B. Welcome. So glad to see you.
Thank you so much, Lauren Glenn. I'm glad to be here. So tonight we are going to be having a wonderful list of guests coming in tonight to speak about the races and the ballot articles. But for now, we'd like to talk a little bit with you about the results process and the live results reporting. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and we have to line up poll reporters in all the Burlington wards who call us after 7 o'clock. They go to the polling place and call us after 7 o'clock with the results. Usually they start to come in around 7:15. Ward 1 is often the first one. We'll find out this time. And then we compile them in the back. We have the results team, and they show up on our front page. And then we also wait for the towns of Essex and Williston and Winooski, and often we go right to their websites to get their numbers. It used to be that the clerks would call us, but that was before websites. And pretty much this year, we're really looking for 8 wards and 4 other communities. So unlike general election, where we're looking for the results from 14 towns, or 14 or 15 towns in the county of Chittenden County. And we're trying to put the state Senate numbers together, which you need all those towns reporting to find out. But this is really about the Burlington ballot questions. And I know you can tell that I'm talking too long, so you can interrupt me anytime.
Well, thank you so much, Laura and Glenn. I am looking forward to seeing how the results come in, and we are also looking forward to talking to the candidates and getting their opinions on the results of the ballot questions and all of the races. So make sure you tune back in later tonight, and we will be interviewing guests all night. So thank you very much.
We'll get into a discussion about some of the other close races that we're going to be following, but we already have the results coming in from Ward 2. Diane, what do we know?
7:02, 2 minutes after the polls closed, we have the results in from Ward 2, and actually everyone was running uncontested. So Jean Bergman got 559 votes. Faizo Hassan, that's for school commissioner, city council was Jean Bergman. School commissioner Faizo Hassan got 48 votes, I believe. I think so. And Inspector of Elections Solveig Overby got 575 votes. So Ward 2 beat everybody else out.
Yep, there you go.
There you go.
Let's talk about some of the other contested races. We talked a little bit about Ward 8 before the break there. What are the other wards that we're keeping a close eye on tonight?
Sure. We're also, I think Ward 8 is really Ward 8 is the most likely to flip at this point. But there is discussion in Ward 1. Zariah Hightower, the progressive incumbent, is running against Rob Gutman, a Democrat. Zariah was elected in 2020 when the progressive wave came through. She sees herself as a compromiser, but she generally supports the progressive agenda. So it'll be really interesting to see if Rob Gutman, the Democrat, can overcome that incumbency, right? The name recognition, et cetera. But there is some discussion that it's possible. So that is a seat that might flip.
Yep. I mean, my understanding is that the Democrats have put some money into that race, some serious money, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and the question is that enough, right? So we'll find out. Hopefully soon. Hopefully maybe 7:04. I know we're past that now, I guess. Anyway, and then the other race is Ward 5. Chip Mason, the Democrat, is relinquishing his seat after 15 years on the council. And he mentioned some of the things we talked about earlier, just the divisiveness and the difficulty of the meetings and being on council. Challengers for Ben Travis, Lenora Travis, she's an independent, and Fareed Munasiya, he's an independent with a progressive backing endorsement. So Ward 5 was in the news recently on the Sears Lane encampment and the removal of that, and that brought some of these candidates forward. So it'll be interesting. That's a three-way race in Ward 5. And we are also looking at Ward 7. I think this one's unlikely to change, but some people feel like it might. This is Ali Jang. He's the independent incumbent, and he has two contenders, Alexander Stith, who's a Democrat, who's also Republican endorsed, and Olivia Taylor, who's an independent, who is progressive endorsed. So this gets complicated. You got to really pay attention to this. So interesting, though, Ali Jang in the past has had both the Democrat, at one time or another, the Democrat and the Republican endorsement. So it's interesting they've actually put their hat in different rings this time. So that's kind of interesting. Could that switch over? It's possible, but again, it's the having incumbency that is really tough to win a race against. Let's
just remind people there are 12 seats on the city council. Who is which parties have what and what's at stake?
Sure. There's 12 seats on the city council. There are these are the 8 district seats are up. There's 8 ward seats are up. There's 4 districts which are not up in this election. And at the moment, the progressives hold half of the seats essentially, which means basically they can go against anything they don't like, but often are able to push their agenda forward. So if that balance changes, it's possible that that agenda will not move as fast as they're hoping.
Right. Or if they lose a seat, then the Democrats could be in control. Of course, the mayor is a Democrat.
Exactly.
And has been pushing a number of issues that the progressives have been successful in stopping.
Okay, well, here we go. Here's Ward 8. Just came in. These are the results from Ward 8. Ali House, the progressive, wins over Hannah King, the Democrat, 321 to 278.
Oof.
That's pretty darn close.
That is pretty close.
So this seat is not going to flip in Ward 8.
And not a huge turnout, as we've talked about, in a year where there was no presidential race, no Bernie Sanders on the ballot, no mayoral race. That's a very, very close close race and very key.
Yeah, I'm just checking the other numbers to see what the numbers. So that's about 600 votes in Ward 8. That tends to be a ward that does not vote in big numbers. Again, that is the student ward we talked about. Inspector of Elections, Sinead Murray, 461, running unopposed, and also Adam France, also running unopposed with 453 votes. So again, that's big news. Allie House, the progressive, wins in Ward 8 for City Council.
And so what does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, we don't know yet, right? What it means is what it means is there's a different person in Ward 8, but still has the progressive party label. So right now, nothing has changed at the moment and the council level. Now let's look at Ward 4. That's the new North End. Sarah Carpenter, running unopposed for City Council, gets 1,565 votes. This is a ward that votes. Yep. The new North End votes. And here you go. Right now we have school commissioner up, Ward 4. Martine Gulick, who is the incumbent, wins by 73%.
Let's get back to Ward 8 for a moment
well,
here.
maybe we'll have to just wait another minute. This is Ward 6. Karen Paul for City Council runs unopposed with 1,022 votes. These numbers seem low to me in terms of voter turnout. We'll have to do a little more research on that. School Commissioner Claire Wool also running unopposed, 994 votes, and Inspector of Elections Jane Smith at 966. And I just want to take a quick look here. It looks like, as a quick look, it looks like all of the ballot items passed in Ward 6.
Okay.
Ballot items in Ward 4, looks like more of a mix, not surprisingly. We have up on the board here, Ward 8 City Councilor, 2-year seat. Again, Allie House, the progressive, wins that seat by 54%, close, very close. So that seat does not shift. Still a progressive in the Ward 8 City Council.
And one of the key issues that has been talked about here in Burlington is policing. Also, who is going to be the police chief? Allie House has been clear that she will not be supporting Acting Chief John Murad.
And we didn't expect Jane Stromberg to either, right? So that hasn't changed, although I think the mayor was hoping that the council would change so he could bring forward Murad again, that there would be a shift and he might be able to get him a pass. So that'll be interesting to see what the next move is if indeed none of the other seats change. That was the most likely, but we'll hold on until we see what's next.
Right. And he may do nothing, right? And can keep Murad in the position that he is, and while they continue whatever the search process is that they're undergoing.
Yeah, I guess as long as interim chief Murad is willing to do that, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. Just a quick review of the ballot items. Maybe we'll just have a quick go over, and then I can give you kind of a sense of how different wards voted on them. How's that? So let's do the school budget first. That's item 1.
Okay, yep, the school budget, actually the school budget proposal I found a little bit confusing on the ballot. They talk about per pupil spending has gone up 13%, but really the schools have seen a drop in the number of students, which then makes each student cost more money, but not necessarily reflecting on the budget that we all pay as taxpayers. The increase that they were actually talking about was about 3% on the tax bills. So it will be interesting to see how that comes out, particularly given that in November voters are going to face this question, a huge question of how much money and whether or not they'll support the building of a new high school.
And it looks like we have the results from wards 2, 4, 6, and 8. So 4 of the wards, that's actually half of the wards, and the school budget item has passed in every one of them. Just a quick look through, but that looks about right. Even in Ward 4, which New North End tends to be the ones who vote against, and they have in some cases, some of the ballot items. So it looks like at least in these 4 wards, again, these are not final results,
right.
But it's looking like people are supporting them, some by a lot. Look at Ward 8, 501 in favor, 62 against. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference. So Okay, Article 2 or Item 2 is the general obligation. This is the tax rate increase, 5.5%. You can see it up on the board here, which is 4 cents. And this is for a variety of, this is really around the inflation factor for staff and for city operations in general. So let me do a quick look. It looks to me like it passed in Ward 2, it passed in Ward 8. This is just a simple majority, which I could never figure out the 2/3 this quickly,
right.
So we'll say that. It went down in Ward 4, however, okay, by about 300 votes. So Ward 4 votes against the tax rate increase, and Ward 6 votes for the tax increase. So the only one was Ward 4. Here's Ward 7. That's the other New North End ward. There's a lot of talking for me here. So City Council.
A lot of adding,
yeah,
too.
A lot, I know, it's amazing, huh? So Jang wins. The independent incumbent councilor, city councilor, wins, oh my gosh, by 2 votes over the second place challenger, Alexander Stith. 2 votes. So that could be a recount, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so that might be a recount.
So 795 to 793.
Whoa, yeah.
Wow.
Ward 1, this is an important one. Ward 1, Zariah wins in Ward 1. Okay, I'm sorry, the numbers were just a little confusing. Zariah Hightower, the progressive incumbent, wins in Ward 1 city councilor. Close, though. 585 to 442. I will not try to figure out the percentage of that, but I'm sure they'll put it up on the board for us, so we'll get a chance to look at that.
Yep.
So Zariah Hightower. So again, so far nothing has changed in terms of party affiliations.
But some close races. I mean, that's a close race for an incumbent.
That is, yes, good point. So the other, here we go. Ali Jang. This is the other. Look at this, 47% each. Ali Jang, the independent incumbent in Ward 7 city councilor, Alexander Stith, only that's 2 votes.
Wow.
And Olivia Taylor, 85%, just 5%.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So that's going to be contested because that's an independent seat and that's a Democratic seat. So that's the one the mayor wants to see. So I think this one will be a recount.
Yeah.
Most likely there'll be a recount requested. I don't know if it's automatic.
How could you not ask for a recount?
Yeah, right. No, I don't think so. I think you have to. Absolutely have to. Okay, this is fun. Wow, this is great. This is quick results, guys. Okay, this is Ward 3. Joe McGee, the progressive councilor incumbent, wins by quite a bit over Christopher Aaron Felker, the Republican, which we did predict. Again, we think perhaps Christopher Aaron Felker has something else in mind. Not the Republican Party does not traditionally win in Wards 2 and 3. And school commissioner unopposed, Polly Vanderputten, and Julia DiPietro is the inspector of elections. And let's take a quick look at the budget, the ballot items. Looks like everything passes.
School budget really passing by a huge margin in just about every ward here.
Except Ward 4, right? Mm-hmm. Except Ward 4. Yep.
And also the city tax proposal, too.
This is where we are. I guess we have everything in at this point.
I think the only one we're waiting on looks like Ward 5 is
5. Okay, this is without Ward 5, so you just want to be clear about that. This is without Ward 5. The school budget has passed by 75%.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose Ward 5, if they had a huge turnout, could affect that, but
yeah, that would be pretty unlikely. Yeah.
But these numbers these numbers for turnout seem low to me. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, but again, as we've mentioned, it's not a presidential election year. Right. It's not a year where we're electing a new mayor.
Nope.
And so it really takes those diehard committed people to come out and vote.
Absolutely. So we should continue our walk through the ballot items. So we are now on number 3. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep track of the ballot items. Okay, we are on 3, right? Yes, the general obligation bond for capital projects. This is about $24 million. This is the one. Well, here let's just go right to the results. Here we are. This is passing by 70% to 30%. It needs 66 2/3, right?
Right.
For the 2/3. Yep. So at this point, with everything but Ward 5 in, it passes. So We'll see, right? We don't want to be finalized yet.
Yeah, and this is about $24 million, and what are we going to get for that?
We get 3 new fire engines, which I know you were very excited about.
Absolutely.
Because we had this chat about fire engines. Sidewalk streets, $1 million for Memorial Auditorium, some emergency communications improvements, and this will draw down quite a bit of federal funds for all these projects. This is the same item that we voted on in November, but about twice the price then.
Right.
And now, and I think the criticism was that people weren't clear what they were getting. So I think this time around it's been much clearer about what we're getting for the $24 million. And that has a cost between $36 and $90 per year for the median priced home in Burlington.
Okay. Then we have, of course, probably the most complicated issue on the ballot is this whole idea of a tax increment financing district. This would expand the tax increment financing district that's already in place. And essentially what city leaders argue is that this does not cost taxpayers money, that these improvements will draw in new development, and the tax money, at least most of it, from that increase in the tax base will be used for these projects that include some changes made in about a 6-block area of on Main Street going from Battery up to South Union, and that looks like it's passing by a pretty wide margin. With the results that we have in thus far, it's leading by about a 62 to 60-40. And that only requires a majority. So,
and I'm going to break in here because there's more news from Ward 5. This is the last one we've been waiting for. So Ben Travers, the Democrat, wins really overwhelmingly over the 2 other contenders with 1,200 votes. So Ben Travers, the Democrat, will be going to City Council from Ward 5. So that seat does not change because that's Chip Mason's seat. So
we've really had no change.
Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The Progressive has maintained here's the breakdown of the other candidates. 78% for Ben Travers, the Democrat in Ward 5 for City Council. So the Progressives got what they wanted.
Yep,
and
so
I think the mayor may not be too pleased.
Yep, so the Progressives are going to hold 6 seats.
6 seats.
And Jang is the independent. He's going to hold his seat.
If we don't have a
recount.
Which we may have a recount if it doesn't flip. The only other interesting thing in Ward 5 is that the school budget overwhelming, but look at this, the tax increase failed slightly, close.
Yep.
So that's interesting. In Ward 5, I would not have expected that. Everything else looks like it passed by quite a bit.
But I have to tell you, one of the big surprises that I'm hearing here is the margin of victory for the school tax.
Big.
Which is, not insignificant, particularly given that in November, taxpayers are going to be really looking at a pretty significant bond proposal in order to pay for a new high school.
Do you think this was impacted, though, by this whole idea that we're actually going to pay less because of the money coming through? But that's only this year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What Diane's saying is that, there's going to be all this money that comes in from the state. And the question is, how much of that money are state officials willing to put towards the school? Will they try to carve off some of that for other uses? And so the way that this is being presented to taxpayers was that even though you're voting for an increase in spending, that there could be a decrease in taxes, perhaps up to 7% reduction if state officials actually put all of that money towards the schools.
So the interesting thing is if that doesn't happen, then I wonder if there's going to be some backlash, and that could affect the November election. That was the danger, I think, of having a fairly big school increase now, is what might happen coming up. Because in some ways, I think, I don't know, I would say it's probably more important to get that school bond passed for the new school, because we really don't have a choice, right? So it'll be interesting to see what the backlash is on that.
But even if state officials decide to keep half of it, which I know Governor Phil Scott has talked about, keeping, as much as up to half of that, voters will still in Burlington see a reduction in their school taxes. It just won't be as big as what had been billed. Instead of 7%, it might be 3.5% or 3%.
But that's only this year. I mean, but next year we'll see the full impact of it, right? I mean, it continues. That's, I think, the tricky part that you don't always realize when you're looking at the ballot. So we've got all the Burlington results in for all the ballot items. So it looks like everything has passed, from what I can tell. I don't see the percent. I was just concerned about that 2/3, but it looks like we got that. So all the 5 Burlington items, which we haven't actually finished talking about all of them, have all been approved in Burlington.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So did the general fund, the city tax increase? It looks as though that's actually behind.
I'm sorry. That's because my eyesight is really lousy. It's really close, though.
Yeah,
right?
It is very close.
Okay, the percentages are right here. I'm sorry.
Yep, 52 to 48%.
So the tax increase went down because of Ward 5.
Yeah, where it was.
We were saying that Ward 5 couldn't do that, but it did.
Well, in Ward 7 out in the New North End,
7, yeah, by a
which
lot,
was
right?
2 to 1. That was. I mean, that seems to be really where the big difference. It looks as though really. Ward 4 and Ward 7, New North End, pretty traditionally places where there's some real challenges getting these passed, and that seems to be where the city tax increase is. Does not look like it's going to pass. The rest of everything else does look like it will.
And it's interesting that's the one that didn't pass, and all the other ones did, especially with the confusion around what the TIF district was about. And I'm kind of surprised that and it's fairly close though. 52, 48,
and this might be a result of the reappraisal. I think many people in Burlington feel as though they really saw a huge tax increase just in the last year. People came in and reappraised all of the properties, and some people saw some pretty hefty increases in the value of their homes and saw also a corresponding big increase in their tax bills, and this might be some of the backlash to that. I think there were some people that were very upset, in fact, some people very angry at that process and didn't feel that it was fair. The commercial property did not go up as much. I think people saw that disparity is not necessarily being fair. I would argue that that's the reason for this loss here.
Yeah, and we haven't had a chance to talk about the TIF district, but it looks like we have a clip on the TIF, which might be a better description than you and I will come up with.
Absolutely. Let's let somebody else explain.
Is essentially asking if the voters will pledge the city's full faith and credit toward the repayment of a bond, which will be issued. In other words, sold to investors. Investors who invest in the bond provide the city with the cash. The city uses those funds to pay for the cost of the rebuilding of Main Street all the way from Union Street down to Battery Street. TIF is the only tool, the only financing tool to pay for this type of infrastructure without raising taxes. This is a locally funded project.
That claim that your taxes don't go up is not really accurate. So from my perspective now, TIF is a public financing tool, but not a really good or an honest one. When we see something that seems too good to be true, often we find out later that it is too good to be true. And that's been my experience with TIF.
Rather than raising taxes to pay the bond back, which is done annually or over a period of years, the tax increment financing is a state program that allows the municipality to define a district, an area of the city in which the revenue comes from the growth in property values. So not by raising taxes, but by seeing values grow, and that growth is captured to pay back the bond.
Yeah. TIF does damage even when it funds worthy projects. It can fund great things, but it's not the right way to fund them. And there are other ways. Brian suggested it's kind of our only alternative, but I think just a straightforward, if you want something, you bond for it, and then you pay for it. That's the right way to do it, because TIF hijacks a tax revenue stream intended to support schools and city services and uses those dedicated dollars for other purposes.
2011, when this district was created, the taxable value of all the properties in the district was $170 million. So that's the baseline. Nothing changes with that revenue. So that property value generates revenue that covers the schools at about 68 cents of every dollar. And the balance goes to fund police and fire and streets and all the, library and parks and rec and all the other city services. In the event that growth never occurs and there's not sufficient growth, we call that increment. So you have nothing to capture. You need to go to the voters and explain to them that this has happened. And then you'll have to dip into your municipal tax revenue. So this is sort of a fail-safe or a backstop or like a guardrail to keep us from defaulting on the bond.
So every property in the TIF district and the downtown area and the waterfront area are places where there's a lot of valuable real estate. Every dollar that goes up on any property there becomes part of TIF, and that robs schools and city services of revenue that they would have otherwise.
And we've never missed a payment, and a single payment in the 8 TIF districts in Vermont has ever been missed. And so that authorization that's on the ballot is required and is critical, but we have never needed to go back to the taxpayer to cover that debt service, that payment.
All right, well, thanks. That was a much easier explanation for everybody to understand than anything that Diane and I could have come up with. And the TIF district did pass. Just a recap here of what we already know now here at 7:40. The balance of power in the city council in Burlington does not appear as though it will change. We have one race that was super close, but as it stands right now, the Progressives will continue to hold 6 seats on the Burlington City Council, and the Democrats and Independents will hold the other 6. Diane, let's walk through some of the other ballot proposals.
Great. So we'll start with Burlington, Article 3. This is the general obligation bond for capital projects, won by 70%. It needed 66 2/3, so it does pass. Article 4, pledge credit. This is the TIF district that Brian Pine just explained, passed 62%. Article 5, this is the sex workers regulation. We have not talked about this yet, passed by 63%. Ward 1 City Councilor Zariah Hightower retains her seat, the Progressive, by 57%. Ward 1 School Commissioner Akilas Lakazu, 100%, running unopposed. Ward 2 City Councilor Jean Bergman, also running unopposed. Burlington School Commissioner Faizo Hassan, this is in Ward 2, 100%. Ward 3 City Councilor Joe McGee, the Progressive incumbent, wins by 72%. The School Commissioner Polly Vanderputten, again, 100%. Ward 4 Sarah Carpenter, 100%, Democrat. Ward 4 School Commissioner Martine Gulick, the incumbent, wins by 73%. Ward 5 City Councilor Ben Travers, the Democrat, wins by 78%. School Commissioner Ward 5 Lucia Compriello, 100%. Ward 6, Karen Paul, Democrat, uncontested, 100%. Ward 6 School Commissioner Claire Wool, also uncontested. Burlington Ward 7, this is the really close race. Ali Jang, the independent, wins by 2 votes. Alexander Stith is there with just 2 votes behind, so we think that will indeed be contested. School Commissioner Monica Ivancic at 100%. Burlington Ward 8.
The key race we were watching.
There we go. The Progressive wins by 54%. This is Burlington Article 1. This is the school budget, 76%.
Wow.
Yeah. Burlington Article 2, this is the general fund tax increase, which goes down. The only item that's gone down at 52%. Still fairly close. And we've gone through the whole thing. Okay.
So no change in the balance of power in the city council.
No change.
The only thing that went down to defeat was the city tax increase proposal.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the question about the sex workers and what that was all about.
Yeah, tell us about. I know you spent some time researching this.
Yeah, this is a really interesting discussion. I think what's going on here is that there is an effort to try to destigmatize the whole idea of sex workers. I think you can make a comparison here pretty safely to the whole idea of decriminalizing drug use, to try to remove the stigma, in order for people to be able to get services without any sort of repercussions, any sort of legal repercussions. I would suspect that we're going to see this yes vote now extended to the state level. And I know there's some state representatives that are pushing to have this whole discussion expanded to other communities and have it so that people who are engaged in this work are able to get health services and not face any sort of criminal prosecution, though, frankly, it doesn't seem like it's been a priority of law enforcement. And I know the argument against it was that people were concerned that once you remove this language from the city charter, that you also remove the ability to regulate it in any way, where it could be located, and the like. So clearly people voted way in favor of it, and not even close.
Yeah, yeah.
We are going to head next to Essex and find out what some of the key issues there. Again, this is a community which has seen a pretty significant change with the merger of Essex Junction and Essex Town.
I miss having the town meeting.
You missed the town meeting. Did you participate in the information meeting last night online?
No.
So that doesn't substitute for you.
That's no. And I know they're working on alternatives to the mass meeting, but I that was missing.
Yeah.
Plus the Essex reporter wasn't out there, So I didn't feel like I was getting all the best information I needed. That was my concern there.
Okay.
But I like, the whole idea of the town meeting. I miss it. I like it.
The whole principle of the thing.
Because we have a right and responsibility. It sounds like you take that seriously.
Yeah, a right and a responsibility, and it's really quite, a positive thing to be able to do this when so many are incapable of doing the same thing. So we shouldn't take it lightly.
And I'm just here to vote because I made a mistake on my mail-in ballot, so I got to fix it here. It's a very important part of our duties as citizens to vote and to make our wishes known to the town.
Normally I would have somebody waiting for me impatiently at 7 o'clock for an opening, okay, because they want to do this before they go to work. Now, on the other hand, we could say that Australian ballot has been successful, okay, and because it's been successful, we don't have people turning out. My life now as a justice of the peace, I'm doing a lot of stuff the week before today, processing those mailed ballots that I wouldn't be doing normally if this was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I know about a third of the population showed up already.
Okay.
From my town here.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ray Garofano, Representative Essex 8-1. And I'm here to help support my friend Brian Sheldon, who's running for the one-year seat for the Select Board. And I'm here to meet my constituents. I'm a newly appointed representative, so I thought I'd get out here and meet some folks. Town meeting has a rich tradition in Vermont, and gratefully, I work for state, and we get the day off, so we actually get time to pay attention to politics and our local happenings. And I want people to get out and vote. I think in Vermont we've done an amazing job of making it really easy for people, and I think a lot of people have mailed in their ballots already. As you can see, it's not very crowded here. Yeah. And in years past, we've come and it's been really busy with lots of people going back and forth. So I'm grateful we live in a state that allows for that and has made it really easy. I think it was nice to have a virtual town meeting. I think a lot of people want to, get back in person, and but we need to be mindful of COVID still, even though it's waning, and we're lucky that the numbers are coming down. But we had a great virtual meeting last night that was very informative. The Select Board put on a great presentation about the articles that people were voting on today. And, community is really energized for, we have a lot of opportunities with COVID coming, with federal money and things happening at legislature. So it's going to be a great year.
All right, we are back. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the other issues in Essex, in particular, the select board. What's in play here on the select board?
Well, we have the results already, so
awesome.
There we go. So we have 2 Essex Select Board seats that are up for re-election. There's a 3-year seat held by Dawn Hill-Fleury. She's the incumbent, and it looks like
she's won.
She is the winner, but you know, that's interesting. I mean, fairly close to the second person. But so Dawn Hill-Fleury wins for the, there's 2 seats, you're right. Okay, 2 seats. So Dawn Hill-Fleury and Kendall Chamberlain both win the 2 seats. So that leaves Andrew Champagne out, and he was quite a bit further behind. The other seat, interestingly, so this is the seat where there is Ethan Lawrence is on the ballot, but Brian Sheldon had a write-in campaign.
Wow.
And it looks like, pretty darn close. Yeah, Ethan Lawrence wins that 1-year select board seat in Essex. Oh, here we go, 55% to 45%.
Yeah.
Again, for a write-in, 45% is a lot. Yeah. So that's, again, Dawn Hill-Fleury retains her seat, 45%, and Kendall Chamberlain wins the seat, 35%. That's the results from Essex. You know, this is so interesting because I know there was somebody in Essex who was, I think, who lived in the Junction, but I don't think that's going to affect this. Anyhow, I never thought that these communities would not merge. I mean, I was completely convinced. So much has been merged in those 2 communities.
Yeah.
I just didn't think they could undo it all.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated that, I mean, it's before the legislature now,
Yep.
so obviously they need a charter change to do it, but it sounds like it is going to happen, and I have to say that really took me by surprise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and how many times have they voted on it? I mean, my goodness, over the years.
30 years, right, back and forth. But it just seemed like so much was happening that they were coming together.
Right, almost without even a formal vote. They were just kind of
the town manager was kind of making it happen, and then it all blew up last year.
Yeah.
So okay, that's the news from Essex.
All right, we're going to head next to Studio B, where we're going to hear from the winning candidate out in Ward 4, unopposed, Sarah Carpenter.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined by Sarah Carpenter, who has just been re-elected as Ward 4 City Councilor. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you to the voters of Ward 4 for re-electing me. I certainly appreciate that.
That's wonderful. I'm curious to know that if your previous experience as a city councilor will help you feel more confident going forward now that you've been re-elected to city council.
Absolutely. There's a really steep learning curve in all of city politics, but particularly just learning how to maneuver around the council and the issues. And of course, I started 1 week after the COVID pandemic started, so it's been a very interesting 2 years.
And speaking of COVID, now that COVID is seems to be on the downturn, how are you looking forward to moving on with a city council that's now not in the midst of COVID?
Well, I'm actually really looking forward to it. We've had little opportunity to meet in person, and as many of you understand, sometimes the issues get very divisive, and there's been little chance to sit down and have conversations with other councilors, and I really missed that, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that in my next term.
Well, that's great, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
We are glad to have you here tonight, and congratulations, and we wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Should we do it, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're going to go through the
All right, we are back, and I want to thank Sarah Carpenter for joining us tonight. And let's head over and find out what happened here in Winooski.
Okay. So in Winooski, this is what we were talking about earlier. There are 7 candidates for 2 seats, for 2 city council seats, and that is just really impressive. When we put it up on the screen, it's just an impressive number of people.
Yeah.
So these are 2 open seats. This is Hal Colston's seat and Mike Myers' seat. So we can run through. Oh, here we go, and we perhaps have the results for this. So there's 2 seats. Aurora Hurd, 25%. Thomas Renner, 24%. And then look at that, 23 for Irene K. Webster. She was really close. But it looks like enough votes, 22 votes. I don't know. But this is, again, the Winooski City Council seats. So Aurora Hurd is She's the Human Resources Director for Bernie's campaign, works at UVM now. Thomas Renner works at UVM Medical Center, formerly worked in the U.S. Senate, been very involved in Winooski activities. So those two folks will be going to the Winooski City Council.
Yeah, but interesting, really two real divisions almost there. We've got the top three very tight, and then a long way to the bottom four.
Yeah, interesting. Is that what happens when you have 7 candidates?
You know, I've never seen 7 candidates before, so I'm not really sure.
Could you
what
imagine
the
if Burlington had 7 candidates? What that would do?
Yeah.
So again, these are more at large. They don't have wards like we do in Burlington, but nonetheless, yeah, it's that's pretty interesting. And I know that Christine Lott, we're going to have her pretty soon. We don't have her at the moment. I just want to do one jump back because we didn't talk about the Essex town budget.
Okay. Yeah.
And one thing I want to mention about it is this is the first year that the town of Essex is not having a traditional town meeting.
Right.
They're voting by Australian ballot. And I don't know what's behind that, but interesting that they have made that move. So the town budget of $16.7 million for FY23 passes by 79%. And they also have an item to authorize cannabis retailers, which is happening throughout the state, and that has passed by 59%. So there's your town budget. Again, 79%. That's a lot.
That's
right?
huge.
That's a big, big number.
Yeah.
And with about 6,000 people voting.
I'll bet Moreau Weinberger would like to grab a few of those votes there in Essex and put them into Burlington.
He absolutely would. So that's the town budget passes by 79%. And then the second article in Essex is the authorized cannabis retailers passed by 59%. Actually, it kind of surprises me there's that big, that 41% said no. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have predicted that. Again, that's happening throughout the state based on state law, right? That's a follow-up to state law.
Yep.
So that's Essex, yeah.
You know, as we get back to Winooski again, I mean, one of the other issues there is this whole issue of non-citizen voting.
Yes.
What's that all about?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So both Winooski and Montpelier have passed non-citizen voting, but rather all resident voting, if you will. And it's interesting because the legislature allowed it, the governor vetoed it, and the legislature overrode it to allow it. So again, this is only for local elections, though, not state level elections. And it's really interesting. So in Winooski, there are 600 people about who are eligible under this all resident voting, and about 60 had signed up last we heard.
Okay.
So one of the challenges is that the ballots are available in other languages, but you have to vote on an English language ballot, and that may have caused some issues. And in some places, let's face it, voting is not something that can be dangerous.
Right.
So there are other cultural issues as well that need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I know one of the other concerns was that, you know, people were concerned who were considering this, that if you vote in an election, a state or a federal election, you can put your efforts to try to become a citizen in jeopardy.
Oh, yes.
So,
yes.
And I think that there were some people that weren't completely convinced that if they got involved with this, that they weren't going to somehow jeopardize their effort to become an American citizen. So it is interesting to see what the numbers are on that. We're going to find out a little bit more about what's going on in the city of Winooski and hear from our friends at Exit Voices.
Yeah, it's good of him to come out. I was like, do a few things. I supervise the neurology department.
Oh man, I can find the photo.
That we received or were issued.
I love the small town community feel here and getting to like vote in local elections where we know that the votes have a direct impact on what happens locally. So we're psyched.
Being involved within, you know, any of like city work and then any of the town work is really important. And then I love how this is a very active community. I love how there is a very full ballot of, you know, a broad amount of people to choose from. So I'm really excited about the outcome and then to see, you know, the great work that gets done here.
We have to increase funding for education. And I like the city council. There was a wide variety of choices for city council. It was very good. Very good.
How did you get informed about the issues?
Oh, I watched the debate on your TV. Yeah, that's a good website. I watched the the city council debate?
It's important to me to vote today because I like the city Winooski. Because of Winooski, is like a small city, but it's not small city for people. It's a lot of people like to live over there, Winooski. Because of Winooski is important to anybody. Because of Winooski is help anybody. It's not see this is white people, this is black. No. Is it help anybody?
I'm here because democracy is important. You look at what's going on in the world. What would Ukrainians give to have the simplicity of traveling half a mile to vote for the leadership in their country, for the propositions? We take it too much for granted. And yeah, it's really critical. So why would I possibly not vote today?
I think that the City Council of Winooski has for a long time been dominated by white folks, if I'm honest, and our population here in Winooski does not reflect that. And so I was really excited that we had diversity of candidates, not just based on race, based on opinion, background, all of the brilliance that they all brought. I was really grateful to CCTV for the candidate forum being recorded, so that because I couldn't be there that night, so that I could watch later on. That was really helpful in me making a decision. I do stay up to date on the school board despite not having kids. I think a lot of folks often think if you don't have children attending schools in the school district, then maybe you're not as engaged in what's happening in our schools. But I'm very excited to see the construction happening down at the school and excited to see what that finalized project will look like.
I think it's really important to share your opinions on public issues. I own a home here. I have kids in school here. I can't complain about what's going on unless I share my opinions about what's going on. Plus, I love voting. It feels like such an important and exciting thing that we get to participate in, so I love taking advantage of it. I think growing up in Vermont, you get instilled with that town meeting day excitement from an early age, and I've never lost it, so I just think it's important.
We're just going here at Essex and Mark Johnson. So Mark is actually...
We want to thank Barry Silver and Emily Brewer for bringing us that. Also, we want to remind you, if you want to follow along with us with the results, which you actually might want to do, it's at ch17.tv. Diane, we have results in from Williston.
We do. We have results in from Williston. So there were 2 uncontested city select board seats, the 3-year seat. These are both incumbents. So Ted Kenny, a 3-year seat, and Greta DeCostino, the 2-year seats, both obviously win. Interestingly, there are a couple of articles in Williston. The first one, that's more of a, I think that's just a housekeeping item about tax installments, 88%. I don't know if that's on. Yep, okay. Accepting the town report, again, housekeeping item, 92%. Article 3, this is the interesting one. This is the budget. Yeah. And what's interesting about the budget is the big piece of this is to have the firefighters go from being volunteer force to a paid professional force because they just can't get the volunteers.
Right.
So that was a big piece of this budget. It was a significant increase, and it passed by 55%. So that's something that people in Williston are willing to deal with. That we talked about growth, right? They're willing to pay for that growth.
Yep, 971 to 788.
Yeah. So the town, and then number 4 is to purchase an ambulance, and that passed by 74%. That's Article 4. So that's a quick recap of Williston.
We're going to head back to Studio B and check in with the Winooski Mayor Christine Lott.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined tonight with the Mayor of Winooski, Christine Lott. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Christine.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting on town meeting day.
Yes, and it was wonderful to meet you today. I saw you out at the polls in Winooski. Can you tell us a little bit about how the voter turnout was today?
Sure. I was there checking people in for a couple hours this morning. It was kind of slow and steady all day long. I heard it got a little busier in the afternoon. Town meeting day isn't necessarily the highest turnout for elections throughout the year, but today's was pretty good turnout for a town meeting day.
Great, thank you, Christine. And I'm curious to know, based on what you've seen from who's been elected and the results of the ballot items, do you think that Winooski is headed in the right direction?
Yeah, and actually the election results really speak to that because all of the budgets passed with significant positive numbers. We had a bond vote for a new fire truck that passed with overwhelming support. And I think seeing that kind of support for what's put forward on the ballot shows that voters do like the direction we're headed. They're, the city, the school, residents, we are, I think, aligned towards a good master plan-driven vision of where Winooski wants to be in the future.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to seeing how things progress with the 2 new city councilors that were just elected. And we thank you very much for taking time out of your night to join us and speak with us tonight. And make sure you stay tuned in for more interviews.
All right, we're back. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Mayor Lott. We're going to give you just an overview here of what's going on in South Burlington. We don't have results yet, but what's at stake?
Yes, and we're hopeful that we'll get results soon. Absolutely. So we have incumbent Tim Barrett and Megan Emery. And Megan Emery's been on the council for quite a long time. This is for City Council. They are both being challenged. Tim Barrett is being challenged by Linda Bailey. That's a 3-year seat. And Megan Emery is challenged by Chris Trombley for the 2-year seat. And a big piece of this is all around the land development regulations in that southeast quadrant. That's been going on for quite a while now. Yep. And there was a period where they had a building moratorium, and there's just been a lot going on. Both of the incumbents voted for the land use regulations, so it'll be interesting to see if that has any impact. Again, they're incumbents, hard to get unseat incumbents, so we don't really know. But
this has been very controversial. Very strong opinions on both sides.
Yep. And then the school is also asking for an increase, and this is around our theme again, going back to the growth issue. There just isn't enough room in the school, and what they're hoping to do is have trailers for administration to make more room for classrooms in the school. Wow. Yeah, so that's what. And then the superintendent, David Young, recently set up his resignation for this year. So be interesting to kind of see how that comes together. Yep. Yeah.
We'll find out a little bit more about what's going on out in South Burlington with our friends with the Exit Voices.
We are at the Chamberlain School in South Burlington. We are 3 students with the Community News Service at UVM working with Town Meeting TV.
We're excited to see how people are voting today.
We have some great candidates this year on Town Meeting Day. This is Linda Bailey. She's running for City Council.
So I'm out here saying hi to everybody and just winding up the campaign. Well, this is how you direct your city and what happens in your city depending on who you vote for. There's also the school budget and the town budget to vote on, and it's important to be there. Otherwise, how can you complain if you haven't even been there to vote on it?
Well, we still have our city center that has a couple more votes that we want to put before the voters, and I have been in that since the very beginning, and I would love to see that through. We also have our new, what we call planned unit developments, which are new rules for how to develop our more developed areas through infill, as well as in our mixed-use commercial areas, and I would love to be a part of that discussion. So some projects that are still ongoing that I would love to see through.
I think people should come out and vote and stuff like that, and I think democracy is an important thing for this country, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. People ought to take it serious and stuff and really understand what is of value to them, their families, and everything going forward.
Well, I'm a teacher, not in this district, but I am, and I know schools are struggling right now, and so here I am. I voted yes for the city part too, because, I think roads and levees are important, I guess, so.
Well, it's a steady turnout. I wouldn't say it's a great turnout yet, but we've got a long day ahead of us. And there were a lot of people that voted early. So we processed a fair amount of those ballots.
I actually am one of the candidates running for the 3-year seat for the South Burlington City Council. My name is Tim Barrett, if you didn't know. The turnout's been a little bit low, but of course this is just a budget city council, school director election. So just the dedicated voters of South Burlington are the ones that are coming out. Of course, I think about 700 plus people voted early with absentee voting. It's our democratic process, and we are all charged with making sure that it works. And the only way that it works is for you to do your research on the candidates, find out who the best person is, and then come and vote or vote absentee, whatever your choice is.
I'm not Megan Emery.
memory. But I'm out here to support her. I've known her for many years and know what she does on the city council. So I wanted to come out and spend some time promoting her candidacy.
There's not a lot that was on the ballot. I am supportive of passing the school budget and our municipal budget. We try to be fiscally responsible in our community and do what we can to, keep our expenses in check.
Well, I do think the whole sort of development of Chittenden County and South Burlington is extremely important. They're extremely important issues because, like housing, for example, I don't see as anybody could argue saying that nobody needs to have shelter. So the whole issue really becomes, what do we think is important? And how should we go about doing it so that we have the least amount of negative impacts that we possibly can in the area?
Well, the concerns that I have about some major aspects of life, and so there are people who are willing to uphold things and others who aren't, so I vote for the people who are. Well, yeah, I'm concerned about climate change, obviously. I guess most people are. And there are a few other aspects having to do with choices that people are making.
Town Meeting TV is really essential for ensuring that democracy remains.
As a resident, I have relied on Town Meeting TV to get the information I need to make votes about local issues and local candidates. It's the one place I know I can go before Town Meeting Day or any other election and hear from all of the candidates and hear about the main issues.
I feel like everything that they do is such a great thing to support free speech, and that it makes local politics accessible to people, and it helps open up those channels of communication between the general public and policymakers.
Everything that Town Meeting TV does for the community is very important.
Town Meeting has been very valuable for us.
Thank you, Town Meeting TV.
Thank you, Town Meeting TV, for all that you do to inform and help the community learn and grow.
All right, we are back, and we're going to give you an update here on the results in the Queen City of Burlington. On the City Council, we have had no change in the balance of power, at least it appears. We have one super close race in Ward 1. Progressive incumbent Zariah Hightower winning 585 to 442 over the Democrat Rob Gutman. In Ward 1, the school commissioner race, Akias Lokasu is unopposed and winning with 100% of the vote. Gene Bergman in Ward 2, a blast from the past, a former assistant city attorney, former city councilor, back and was unopposed. We'll be hearing from him shortly. In Ward 2, Faizo Hazan, unopposed, winning a position on the school commission. In Ward 3, incumbent Joe McGee, winning over Christopher Aaron Felker. That not even a close race, 72 to 28%. Ward 3, the school commissioner Polly Vanderputten winning a seat. In Ward 4, out in the New North End, Sarah Carpenter unopposed, winning her seat on the City Council. In Ward 4, the school commissioner race, Martine Gulick, the incumbent, winning easily over challenger Erica Reddick. In Ward 5, where Chip Mason, the Democrat, stepped down, replaced by another Democrat, Ben Travers, winning easily over two other opponents. Ward 5 in the school commission, Lucia Campriello winning in a race unopposed. Ward 6, Karen Paul, longtime city councilor, unopposed, winning back her seat. Claire Wool, longtime city school commissioner, unopposed in that race as well. In Ward 7, boy, the close race of the night. Ali Jang holding on to his seat over Alexander Stith. by 2 votes. We haven't heard officially yet whether there'll be a recount, but boy, I would be surprised if there wasn't. Boy, you gotta wonder. You almost would rather lose the race by 20 than 2, but we'll see whether there's a recount there. In Ward 7, the school commission race, Monica Ivanchik was running unopposed. Ward 8, the race that we were really watching tonight, the one that could have really changed the balance of power, did not. Allie House winning 321 over Democrat Hannah King with 278 votes. The money items here. The school budget passing by just an overwhelming margin, 3-1. Frankly, I find that a bit of a surprise. 6,946 to 2,202. And again, a reminder, in November, voters are going to face a question about a bond issue to build a new high school. The one mighty item that has gone down to defeat was an increase in the city tax rate. That went down 52 to 48%, clearly repercussions from the citywide reappraisal. The general obligation bond, which required a 2/3 approval, does get it with 70% to 30%. This is going to pay for some $24 million in capital items, including 3 new fire trucks. The TIF district, again, needing only a majority vote, winning easily. This will allow some improvements to be made in the Main Street area. The question about removing some language in the city charter, which could regulate sex workers, winning almost by a 2-1 margin. You can expect to see this vote being brought to the state level and a push at the state level to try to remove the language across the state on this.
And we have some results from South Burlington.
Awesome.
Yes. So both incumbents win South Burlington for City Council. And here we go. Tim Barrett at 71% for the 3-year seat in South Burlington. And the other race is the 2-year seat. Thank you. Megan Emery.
Yeah, easily.
Easily 69%. Yeah, wow. Okay, so both incumbents retain their seats. I don't know if this is a referendum on the land use regulations or not, but they win by quite a landslide. And it looks like also we're missing one district in South Burlington in terms of the ballot items, Orchard 7-1. At this point, all of the articles pass, but we're still waiting for one more district.
So they do look like they have big enough margins that
probably
be likely those results will stay as they are.
I think so. Yep. Yep.
All right, we're going to head next to Studio B when we're going to hear from the Ward 4 School Commissioner, Martine Gulick.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined with Martine Gulick, who was just reelected to a 3rd term as Ward 4 School Commissioner. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Martine.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you actually won tonight's vote by about 2/3 of the vote. Were you expecting this outcome?
You know, I actually did predict that I would probably get about 2/3 of the vote and that Erica would probably get about 1/3 of the vote. So, yeah, I think I was pretty accurate.
Great. And so the school budget also passed in Ward 4. What are your next steps moving forward?
Yeah, so the school budget passed, but there were 700 voters who did not vote for the school budget. So it says to me that we on the school board and the school district have work to do. We need to talk to people about what the financial implications are of not passing a school budget and what the financial implications are of passing a school budget and how it affects our entire community. And we also need to focus on what are we going to do about a permanent high school.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, my only thoughts are that obviously we're the biggest city in the state of Vermont, and not having a high school to me is it's baffling and it's a crisis. And I guess I'm curious as to why I don't see more of our legislators, our governor, and our folks in power doing something about this. This is a crisis and it's an issue that needs to be resolved.
Thank you very much, Martine, for that answer, and also for joining us tonight after a very busy day today. we appreciate you coming in, and congratulations on being reelected. And make sure you stay tuned in for more interviews as the night goes on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Emily. We're going to also right now recap the results in the city of Winooski. Just a really fascinating story with 7 people running for 2 seats. And the winners appear to be Aurora Hurd and Thomas Renner. Following close behind that was Irene Webster, and the 4 other candidates really distant with only single-digit percentages. So congratulations to Aurora Hurd and Thomas Renner winning those 2 open seats there in the city of Winooski.
And we should also let folks know that they can look at these results themselves if they'd like to on the website at
channel ch17.tv.
Yes, all right.
We did that in stereo. Awesome. All right, let's head over now.
We got one more.
Okay.
School trustee, a 3-year seat, and it looks like Kamal Dahal, who is the incumbent, wins by 76%.
All right. That was
interesting. David Xavier Wallace was also running for city council too, if you noticed.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Wonder what happens if you win both. So,
you're a very busy person.
Let's head back to Studio B, where a very busy Emily Brewer is there with Gene Bergman.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined with Gene Bergman, who was just elected to the Ward 2 City Council seat. Now, Gene served actually 3 terms on the City Council from 1986 to 1992, and you were also the Assistant City Attorney for 20 years. So
long time ago, and yes, a long time. Yeah, it was great. And I just want to thank the voters of Ward 2 and the people of Ward 2 for showing me the confidence that they did today. It was really gratifying. I was out there all day, and it was a good day, cold, which is the way that March is supposed to be.
Indeed, and I was out there too, and the voter turnout was it was come and go. But did you see a lot of folks at the polls?
You know, I did. I'm pretty pleased at the steady flow of folks, particularly from late morning into right up until the end. So I didn't really know if we'd have as many folks as we did. Ward 2 has had a somewhat lower turnout, and this is an off-year election. My race was uncontested, so there are lots of reasons why voter turnout might have been what it was. But I was pretty pleased, and I enjoyed immensely meeting people and talking with folks about issues.
Well, that's wonderful, Gene. Thank you very much. Now, you are a long-term progressive. Can you tell me a little bit about how you think your previous experience on the City Council will help you tackle current issues that are facing the city?
Sure. You know, when I was elected in 1986, we had just gone through revenue sharing cuts by the Reagan administration, a neoliberal slashing of government funds to fund all sorts of things from infrastructure to social programs. And Bernie, who I served with at that time, he was the mayor, had run since 1981 on a platform of changing the property tax to make it more progressive, to have alternatives to the property tax. And we did that. The gross receipts tax is one. The special assessment for the commercial buildings are another. We tried and failed to get things like an anti-speculation tax through the legislature, but those were exciting times. And so those sort of animate me when I go, you know, we just went through a reappraisal, and it was devastating for people. And there was a shift, actually, to the property homeowner from the commercial sector, and to lower and moderate income homeowners and owners to from more wealthy folks. And part of what I believe we need to be doing now, and what I take from that earlier time, is the idea that we can make our tax system, our property tax system, our entire tax system more progressive, more based on the ability to pay, and that there are a lot of ways to do that. I'm actually really excited about the prospect of moving forward with the ideas that were part of the unanimously passed resolution on reappraisal. So we've just in that. There's a lot of ideas on there. I'm excited about to work with Councillor Freeman, who threw out a number of really important ideas that we should consider. And, you know, we'll see if we can be as successful as we were under Bernie. All we can do is fight hard and try.
Well, that's great, Jean. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing with our viewers a little bit about your future plans for the City Council. And we wish you all the best going forward.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. Channel 17 is amazing. It's essential for our democracy. So thank you very much for being there for the folks.
Thank you, Jean. That means a lot. Make sure you stay tuned in.
All right, in Burlington, just to recap here now at 8:25, the Burlington City Council, there is no change in the balance of power. In terms of the money questions, the school budget approved by a huge margin, a 3-to-1 margin. The increase to the city tax rate, the only money item that has gone down to defeat, 52 to 48%. The general obligation bond, which needed a 2/3 approval, winning with 70% of the vote. That'll pay for many items, including 3 new fire trucks. The TIF district winning soundly. This will allow some improvements to a 6-block area on Main Street. The proposal to remove language in the city charter that regulated sex workers, winning easily, 63 to 37%. And those are some of the highlights coming out of Burlington. Again, the only item that did not pass in Burlington, the city tax rate. Be interested to hear what Mayor Moreau Weinberger has to say about that. We hope to be hearing from him later. But right now, we're going to head back to Studio B with the ever-busy Emily Brewer standing by with Joe McGee.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined with Joe McGee, who was just re-elected to the Ward 3 City Council seat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'm curious to know what your next steps going forward are now that you've been re-elected to Ward 3.
Sure. You know, I think first I'm really grateful to have the support of Ward 3 residents for a second time in 6 months here. And, you know, I'm looking forward to getting to work, making sure that we're making progress on racial justice, making sure that we're continuing to push for necessary reforms to public safety, standing up mental health and medical worker rapid response teams. I think that is essential work, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work going forward.
Thank you, Joe. And you had said in the past that you considered not running for re-election until you had a chance to talk with some of the folks living at the Sears Lane camp, which has since been torn down. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about why that changed your mind?
Sure. Yeah, you know, I think it really underlined for me the ways in which our government fails folks who are at the margins, and to be able to find a way to advocate for folks most in need in our community, to advocate for city resources to meet people's basic needs right now, to find solutions to bring affordable housing to the city, because we know that we desperately need that. I think, you know, that gave me a clarity that I hadn't really had after the special election.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, for joining us tonight. Congratulations on being reelected to the Ward 3 seat. And now that you are going to be on the City Council for a full 2 terms, are you looking forward to that?
I am. You know, I think we have a lot of important work ahead of us. We are still in the middle of the pandemic. We have a lot of work to do to continue to make sure that we're responding to that effectively and planning for the recovery afterwards. So I'm looking forward to doing that work and addressing some of the affordability concerns that we have here in the city over the next 2 years.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us. And make sure you folks stay tuned in for more interviews coming up soon.
All right. Thank you, Emily. We'll recap here what's happened in terms of the ballot items in South Burlington. Everybody in a yes mood tonight in South Burlington. where the city budget passed by an almost or more than a 2-to-1 margin. In the school budget, close behind, winning with 63% of the vote, and the third item there on the ballot, using some surplus funds for unanticipated COVID expenses, and that winning by a huge margin, 80 to 20%. Diane, what do we got going on in Winooski?
Yeah, I've got the Winooski ballot items. The city budget of $8.7 million approved by 71%. That's high.
Wow.
Yeah. Number 2. Actually, that was number 2. I apologize. The first one was a housekeeping item. Number 3, accept funds from non-property tax sources. Again, that's a housekeeping item, passed 92%. That's on the city ballot every year in Winooski. Article 4, approve a general obligation bond for a fire truck and related capital improvements for city fire departments. That's $1.3 million. And I know this is close to your heart, Mark.
Yeah.
And this one passes by 79%. So very high number there. Article 5, accept, expend, this is a housekeeping item, 89%, it passes. And finally, the school article number 6, this is the school budget at $21.3 million, passes by 68%. So school budgets did well.
Yeah.
They did well this year, this town meeting day.
How do you say no to spending some of this extra money that's coming in?
That's true. That's true, knowing it's coming from the magical federal government somewhere, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more, actually. Authorize school board to lease Elm Street from Winooski Housing Authority for preschool and Head Start. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, we didn't have that one. I had that one on my list. That is passed by 80%. Seems like a good thing, yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Okay, that's Winooski.
All right, we're going to head out to Ward 7, find out some of the issues going on out there. Again, our friends from Exit Voices.
My name is Boniface, and I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions about town meeting day. Yes. What's your opinion about town meeting day?
Town meeting day is very important because this is when people decisions are made, and this is also a community, event where people come together, see each other, and also have their voices heard and respected. It's an amazing day.
Cool. What do you think about the new school budget?
Yeah, the school budget, I feel like, we have to support our schools. We have to support our students, and investing in our children doesn't have a price. I hope that the voters will vote in support of it today.
What do you think? What I think as far as the tax increase that's proposed on the ballot today.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I think that some of the improvements that's proposed, the tax increase, I think will benefit the city.
My other question is,
have a great day.
For you, what is the importance of voting?
I think it's very important voting because, it doesn't seem like when one person votes that it means very much, but, when you put all of those votes together, they make a big deal. And sometimes elections come down to just very few votes deciding. Bernie Sanders, when he was first elected as mayor, was only elected by very few votes. So I think it's important to have your voice heard, and that's one of the main ways I can do it.
All right, Mr. Jang, my last question is, what do you think about the new school budget?
Again, I think I used to be, now I'm a carpenter, but I used to be a teacher. I used to teach middle school, and I find that education is one of the best things we can do with our money.
What are your thoughts on taxes?
On taxes?
Yeah.
Well, my friend, I think taxes are too damn high. And I think because of COVID, that the city and the state is trying to make up extra money off the taxpayers of Burlington, coming up with these, excuse my language, bullshit rules and bullshit taxation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's what I think of taxes, because I think that we are the highest tax people in Burlington, and I live right down in the North End. When I bought my house, I was paying about $5,000-$6,000 taxes, close to $9,000 now.
Also, I heard about the school budget. What do you think about?
Oh, don't even mention the school budget to me, okay? Because like I say, the school budget has went from 5 years ago, it was like 60-some million. I don't know what the budget is now, but I did vote no. They want to build a new high school. Guys, the thing about the high school, they said the high school, the ground is poisoned or contaminated.
Yeah.
So I got a question to ask you. If the high school grounds are contaminated, then why is North Beach not contaminated? Because the water does run downhill. That's all I'm saying to you.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined with Councillor Ali Jang, who was just re-elected to a third full term on Ward 7, Burlington City Council. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Now, it was a very close race tonight. You actually won by 2 votes. Were you expecting this outcome?
Not really. I thought that I would vote for by more, but you know, I want to thank those that come out and voted, but also this election particularly is an amazing one because it's now time for independency. People need to stay away from political parties. Someone who run against the Democratic Party, the Progressive Party, and what's left of the Republican Party, and also someone who did not get any endorsement from any union was able to come and won, and I'm just very excited. So, and also thank you to Team Ali. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. And can you just speak a little bit more on why you think it's important to have an independent voice on the City Council?
Yes, and I think what we need to talk about is independent voices, because what is holding this city back is partisan politics. I've been there with them, seeing them fight, and stay away from those fights. I think it is time for us to come together, strengthen our neighborhoods, and stay away from just a small ideological groups, and run this city and run it to the best of our ability.
What are your next steps moving forward?
Moving forward is basically everything that I run on to deepen the tie in my neighborhood, make sure that North Avenue receives the attention it needs, and also talk to people about, you know, climate change. What can we do in our neighborhood, in our homes, and also make sure that the Burlington High School is built. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Ali, and congratulations on being re-elected to Ward 7 City Council seat. And we look forward to seeing how the future goes.
Thank you.
Wow, fascinating. Ali Zhang winning his seat by 2 votes. You heard somebody mention in that earlier discussion about how close the race was when Bernie Sanders first won election back in the mayoral race back in 1981, where he won that race by 10 votes. So there is actually a little bit of history of that. Also, Weinberger, when he was running in his first race, defeating Tim Ash, that was by 1 vote. You really got to wonder, these people that lose by so little, they'll be, I'm sure, asking all of their friends whether or not they voted or not.
Maybe they don't want to know.
Yeah. We are going to head next to Williston.
We're going to recap Williston results. So Williston Select Board candidates, Ted Kenny for the, we're going to do ballot items. Let's do that instead. This is Article 1. This is a housekeeping item, passes by 88%. Number 2, town report, again, housekeeping item, 92%. Article 3, this is the town budget. This is where all the firefighters are to move from a volunteer force to professional force, 55%, that passes. And item 4 is the ambulance purchase, and that passes by 74%. Williston Select Board, Ted Kenny, the incumbent, running unopposed. And Greta D'Agostino, again, the incumbent to your seat, running unopposed.
There you go.
There you go.
We actually have some results tonight that we're going to give you from Colchester.
We do. I don't know if we're going to bring these up. Okay, so we have the school articles. We'll start with those. The first one is to actually compensate the school board directors for $1,700 annually. I know this is being talked about quite a bit in terms of equity issues, especially. That does pass. Article 2 is borrowing money, the school district borrowing money for unanticipated expenses. That also passes. And the school district budget also as well passes. Pretty much everything, all the articles in Colchester passed.
Yeah.
So Article 4 is the municipal services budget passes. Article 5, Town Park Capital Plan passes. Article 6, Town Transportation Capital Plan passes. And Article 7, the Mallett's Bay Sewer Project. This was a big deal.
Yeah,
They've been trying to do this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
There's concern about if there'll be too much development because of the fact this happens. But on the flip side of it, they're really trying to deal with contamination in Mallett's Bay.
Yeah.
So that does pass as well.
Boy, you know, that defeat of the city budget in Burlington really seems to be sticking out like a sore thumb with all of these yes votes throughout, you know, the rest of the county, really. I'll be very interested to hear what Mayor Weinberger has to say about that issue.
Yeah, and I hope we get a chance to hear from him tonight and sort of what his take on it. You know, is it because of the reappraisal? If the reappraisal hadn't happened, maybe.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to do the reappraisal, right? I mean, the state really requires it because they punish you if you don't.
Yeah.
So at some point it had to happen. I don't know that it needed to happen during a pandemic, but that's where it happened.
I just think there were a lot of people that feel as though it was not the best process. There were a number of people whose homes were not actually visited. I know there were even people that challenged the results who wound up having it go up even further.
Yeah.
So
I think,
very controversial.
Yeah, I think the process to dispute it was really the one that I heard the most about.
Yeah.
People felt like that they didn't take it seriously, and you know, this is challenging trying to do this in a pandemic. They didn't see anyone. They did it all via records and things that they had at City Hall already. So. Yeah.
Yep. And also the fact that the commercial property went down in value because, again, of the pandemic.
Yep.
Many of the places were lowered in value because they weren't producing the kind of income that they had in the past. Some people felt that was not the proper time to have the snapshot done of what the value is, and be interesting to see once we come out of this pandemic what will happen to those values in the future. We're going to head back to Studio B with winning Ward 5 candidate Ben Travers.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined now by Ben Travers, who was just elected to Ward 5 City Council in Burlington. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Ben.
Thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be here at Town Meeting TV.
Now, it's been a long day for you today. Were you out at the polls?
I was. It has been a long day. It's cold. It's wintry out there. I guess that's the result of having Town Meeting Day as early as possible on March 1st. So if I'm a little red in the face and have some hat hair, it's because I've been out there since 7 a.m.
Now, you won this vote by a considerable amount of votes. Were you expecting this outcome? And I'm curious to know what your next steps are now that you've been elected.
Yeah, I was not expecting this outcome. I never at any point took anything for granted. I want to congratulate my opponents, Fareed and Lenora, for running a great campaign. I think they both were great candidates. I'm incredibly honored and humbled by the support placed in me by my community. Next steps, I committed as a candidate that while I'm running as a Democrat, I don't approach this with any sort of political bias and agenda. I saw some of my fellow city councilors here to be in the studio. I look forward to working with them regardless of what political party they're from. My sense is that voters are frustrated. The city's facing some very complicated issues right now, wants to make progress, and so I look forward to trying to dial back some of the political rhetoric and cut through some of the divisiveness to the end of making progress for our city.
That's great, Ben. Thank you. And I'm curious also to know, you were just elected to a seat that has been held by a long-standing Democrat for about 10 years now. And do you think you're ready to fill those shoes?
Yeah, I mean, Chip Mason leaves really big shoes to fill. I want to take an opportunity here to thank Chip for his years of service. I was really honored early on in the campaign to receive Chip's support and was very grateful to have him out at the polls with me first thing today. One of the things I really appreciate about Chip is he approached every issue with common sense, with rational thinking, and while I can't guarantee Chip and I will align eye to eye on every political issue, I do intend on following in his shoes and following in his footsteps in approaching issues in a similar manner, carefully, considerately, thinking about all points of view, hearing all points of view before making my vote.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ben, and thank you for joining us tonight after a very long day. We really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best moving forward.
Thanks very much. Town Meeting TV is such an essential service for our city. I'm so glad that we were able to be here in person this year and look forward to our continuing to work together.
Us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're not going to argue with that. We also believe in the great value of town meeting television here, and it really was so helpful, I thought, for all the voters to be able to see some of the forums that were put on. A lot of hard work was done by an awful lot of people here at Channel 17, interviewing the candidates and the forums that they had, and some of the discussions about some of the issues, explaining things like the tax increment financing district. I found that the school discussion that was done by the superintendent was just invaluable. And to recap here what's happened in the city of Burlington tonight on the Burlington City Council, where we were closely watching whether or not there would be any sort of change in the balance of power. None has come to pass. The key race out in Ward 8 was won by a progressive, replacing a progressive. And so we're not going to see any sort of change there. Unless, yeah.
Unless
there's a change with that,
Ward 7
recount. My goodness.
End. Yeah.
Yeah. The Ali Zhang race where he won by 2 votes. But just a recap here in Ward 1, Zariah Hightower, the progressive incumbent, winning 585 to 442. In the school commission, Nikias Lokasow, unopposed. Gene Bergman, blast from the past, coming back, progressive, replacing Max Tracy, the city council president who decided not to run for re-election. Gene was unopposed. Faizo Hassan winning a seat on the school commission in Ward 2. In Ward 3, Joe McGee, the incumbent, winning re-election easily by a almost 3-to-1 margin. Polly Vanderputten, unopposed, winning a seat on the school commission. In Ward 4, out in the New North End, Sarah Carpenter, Democrat, winning her seat unopposed. And in Ward 4, on the school commission, Martine Gulick winning 3-to-1 over Erica Reddick. Ward 5, the City Council, Ben Travers, a Democrat, replacing a Democrat, Chip Mason, who decided not to run, easily winning over 2 opponents. In Ward 5 on the School Commission, Lucia Campriello winning unopposed. Karen Paul, Ward 6, winning her City Council seat, again unopposed. Claire Wool, School Commissioner in Ward 6, also running unopposed. And in Ward 7, again, the race that was just really a cliffhanger here. My goodness, 795 to 793. Ali Zhang holds on to his seat over Alexander Steeth. On the school commission race, Monica Ivanchik winning unopposed. Ali House in the race that we were really keeping an eye on here, the progressive replacing Jane Stromberg, also a progressive, winning over Hannah King.
You know, I'm struck by how many school board seats where folks are running unopposed.
Yeah, tough job.
A tough job. I wonder, you know, it seems to me that schools are so complex that it takes a long time to get your footing.
Yeah.
To be a school board commissioner, and I wonder if it would make sense to have longer terms. You know,
Yeah.
just because we just don't see a lot of folks running. I wonder if that would help people get a little bit more traction, and you know, maybe 4 years in, and then I wonder.
Might also scare people off to think that they have to make that big a commitment too.
Maybe,
but it is. It's tough. It's you know, historically too been a case where getting people who want to run for it, it's a really tough job. It doesn't have this sort of glory of being on a city council.
I hadn't thought about glory in city council. Okay.
Well, that's become a much more difficult job, as we were talking about really to begin the program here. We had 3 incumbents in Burlington, you know, several of whom, and some of others were considering not running as well, just because of it's really becoming a much more difficult job. We've seen protests that have been happening at city councilors' houses. The mayor, Merle Weinberger, seeing a protest at his home. Something I think that really is unusual and new, and something that I think some of the councilors found quite intimidating. So.
Yeah.
We're going to head over to Studio B with the winner in Ward 1, Zariah Hightower.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am joined with Zariah Hightower, who was just re-elected to a second term on Burlington City Council's Ward 1. Congratulations, Zariah, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, you were initially hesitant to run for re-election. Can you tell us why that was the case and why you decided to run?
Yeah, the last 2 years have definitely been extremely difficult, and I was dealing with some acute mental health problems, both I think in terms of the pressure and just some of the issues getting nationwide attention and some of the hate mail from that. But I think over the last few months, council has, I think, struck a very different tone. I think the councilors in particular have tried to be much more collaborative, even when, there's outside voices that are maybe less collaborative. And I think I play a really important role in making that conversation continue in that tone on the way forward. And I'm also really excited about some of the issues that I cared about a lot, like just cause eviction moving forward at the state level, and of course police reform continuing to be a priority in the city.
Great, thank you. And now that you have been reelected, how do you feel, and what are your next steps moving forward?
Yeah, I'm excited, of course. It's always great to get I definitely felt like even though there was a lot of pushback on the state level or on the national level for some of what's happening in Burlington, I always felt like my ward did support me, and it's always great to get that validation. And yeah, I'm excited again, especially to work on renters' rights and continue to try to find the balance between police accountability and public safety.
That's great. And are you looking forward to working with the new city councilors that were just elected tonight?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a great slate, both on the progressive side and on the Democrat side, and of course Ellie Jang again. So yeah, definitely, it's going to be a different council, different feel, new things to learn. But I'm excited for another 2 years.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us tonight after a very busy day at the polls, and we look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
All right, we're back, and we really want to thank Emily Brewer for doing a great job tonight interviewing all of these candidates. I mean, my goodness, what a great job. So when we began tonight, Diane, we were really interested in Burlington, whether or not there'd be any sort of change in the city council and the balance of power. There were a lot of questions about some of these money issues and whether or not how people were feeling about their pocketbook, and given we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so what stood out for you tonight in terms of the results? Any surprises?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we definitely talked about the balance of power, the possibility that some of the seats might be upset, but really power of incumbency stayed, indeed, as it usually does. And there was actually no change to the council, so which is interesting because we're actually waiting to hear from the mayor, Weinberger. Curious how he sees that, because we know, for instance, with the interim police chief, Murad, he sort of punted it to the next council in terms of confirmation.
Really hoping to pick up that extra Democrat.
Pick up that seat, yeah, and it didn't happen. So
and
again,
really, and in a way, he kind of pushed the question of making the council vote on it. Many people thought that he did that in order to try to sort of provoke some more interest in these races, and didn't seem to happen.
Yeah, so a little surprised. I thought we might have a shift because there's been a lot of talk about the progressive wave that came in, and not everyone has been happy with the results of that, but it didn't seem to actually impact the way people voted, or for those who did vote. And I think the other thing was I am surprised that so many of the money ballot items passed in Burlington, and in retrospect, I'm not as surprised that the tax increase failed.
Yeah,
because of everything that's been going on, and because how I think you can't underestimate how angry people at least homeowners were about the reappraisal.
But you know, surprisingly, how easily the school budget passed. And you would have thought maybe there might have been some lingering anger directed towards that. And also some not even lingering, but some anticipated concern about this vote in November.
Sure.
This could be a really significant ask that's made in November to pay for a new high school. The current high school out on Institute Avenue there, which was deemed to be unsafe because of some of the chemicals that were found there. Wow, I mean, in November, I think people are just kind of holding their breath to see how big that ask is going to be. But the school budget passed by a 3-to-1 margin.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there were some signs up around town that said, "Keep Burlington affordable, vote no," on all the items. And I thought, the thing that struck me was keeping it affordable, because I really never have thought of Burlington, at least recently, have being affordable at all. Yeah. So I thought that was sort of interesting. I was like, oh, okay, so there are people who do think it's affordable right now and it's going to get worse. Of course, they must not be very happy about this.
Maybe there wasn't room on the side to say, don't make it even more unaffordable.
That's right. You can't fit that on a sign. Yeah, maybe so, maybe so. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And I wonder if there wasn't also some confusion, and I don't know if this was planned or not, around the whole idea of the state kicking in money. I mean, because there's this feeling there's so much COVID money. Yeah. There's so much money out there. So it's all flowing down to the towns and cities.
That definitely benefited the school tax proposal.
I think so, and maybe people just didn't, it was hard to sort it all out.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, but I think the real interesting question, because even on the ballot, it said that you could anticipate a tax decrease on that. There were some people that were critical of the school commissioners and the folks that put the ballot together to actually name a number on that without the state having made a commitment to how much.
Right.
And boy, if the state doesn't come through, maybe that was to put pressure on state officials to do that. But if that doesn't come to pass, I wonder if there'll be some lingering resentment from that.
And that could prove difficult in November when the big item comes through.
Yeah. So outside of Burlington, what really stood out, if anything?
Well, I know we're running some of the numbers here. I thought Brian Sheldon, that's actually in Essex, as a write-in candidate, got an enormous number of votes, and you just don't see that very often.
Right.
So that was pretty interesting. Most of the town budgets and school budgets, I believe, passed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I can't think of any that
back
didn't.
To I mean, we had a theme about growth and whether other communities were willing to pay for the cost of growth, like all the firefighters and emergency personnel.
Yep.
And there were some big asks for that, and they all passed.
Yep.
So people are willing to pay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also that really fascinating race out in Winooski, where we really had, two real tiers, where there were 3 candidates that were in the running for those 2 seats, and then the other 4 really trailing very, very far behind.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see next round.
Yeah.
How many, if some of those folks kind of move back up, or what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, but by then we'll have incumbents, right? So.
Right. So then, exactly. If they run. I mean,
as we've seen, the power of incumbency is really
very
quite
strong.
something.
Very
and I guess the other open question that we have in Burlington is whether or not there will be a recount in the Ali Zhang race.
If anything will change.
Yeah.
Which, as we talked about before, they often don't.
Right.
Right. In fact, often they find votes that for the winner. But it is interesting because, especially in Burlington, because it is all automated.
Yeah.
It has to be something with a machine or a folded ballot or something. And it's interesting because I was reading something about how many ballots in other states have been thrown out. And I guess they actually let you know if your mailed-in ballot is thrown out for a variety of intriguing things about not signing it the right way or the wrong code. I mean, it's kind of fascinating. And one thing I don't know in Burlington, what happens when they toss ballots? They don't let you know, I assume, because there's not enough time. You don't have a chance to re-vote. So I wonder if some of those ballots, maybe we call them disputed ballots, which sort of reminds me of hanging chads, trying to stay away from that. But that I wonder if some of those might be disputed.
Yep. Well, disputed elections is certainly something we've heard about at the national level, isn't it, Diane?
Yes, we absolutely have.
Yeah.
We absolutely have. Yeah. So, and a lot of incumbents ran unopposed at the select board level, city council level, as well as especially school board.
Yeah.
It feels like more than I recall, but that may be a trend. I don't know.
And even in the city of Burlington, to have 3 of those races completely unopposed.
Completely, yeah.
And there, with all due respect, there seems to be no whiff of a Republican Party anymore in the city of Burlington. It really is all about the Democrats versus the progressives. That's really been that way for quite some time. But, not to sound too old, but in the old days, there was actually a Republican Party, and there would be representatives of that party that came through. The Williston, out in Williston, more yeses than no's, and people were certainly willing to spend some money. And interesting in a difficult economic time, and uncertain, I guess, economic time, more than anything else.
Yeah, and the thing that interests me about folks, like for Ward 2, where there was an open seat, there was only one candidate. And I think that's interesting, because that's really an opportunity, as we talked about. When you have an incumbent, it's really hard to unseat them. But having an open seat is really an opportunity, and it's interesting that nobody came forward.
Yeah, I mean, the Old North End has certainly been very strong for the progressives. But I think you're right. It is a surprise that there wasn't a Democratic, at least a candidate put out there.
Yeah.
Gene Bergman's certainly a very strong candidate, well-known name, would have been difficult to defeat, virtually an incumbent in many respects. But still, I think you're right that there being no one to even put up a challenge to him.
Even just to get your name out for the future, like others did, like I think Christopher Allen Felker, certainly in Ward 3, put his name out there as a Republican. I think he has other things in mind, right, as a way to get his name out.
So how did Moreau Weinberger do tonight? How did we rate that?
Well, nothing changed, right? I mean, he got his some of his ballot items, his money items. I think losing the tax was big.
Yeah.
I think that hurts him. I think the balance of power not changing hurts him.
Yeah.
And I'd be just really interested to see if he runs next year.
Yeah. That I think is.
He seems like he's running out of energy from my perspective. That's just me.
Well, I can remember growing up that my mother used to say that being the mayor of New York City was a more difficult job than being president of the United States. Just the complexity of it. It's a there's a lot of difficult issues here in the city of Burlington. We've got the city place, which actually appears as though something may actually happen on that.
It's kind of like the Champlain Parkway, though, right?
Yeah. So, those are, he may want to serve one more term just to get some of those projects completed. But I hear you. I mean, it's a tough job. He's been in now, 11 years?
Has it been that long?
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And they haven't been easy ones.
No, and a lot of, the very controversial issues with the staffing of the police department, this question about the chief, it's again, there's going to be some real complex discussions about the new high school. So a really challenging time, and I can't say I can really think of anybody who's an obvious person who might run. I mean, I'll be interested to see if somebody like Brian Pine or Gene Bergman or some of the other folks that have been talked about as possible names to run. What the signal will be from Moreau Weinberger.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. And so, does he see? Because I remember earlier on we talked about him. Everyone thought he was going to run for higher office.
Yeah.
Everyone was completely convinced he was just being the Burlington mayor, so he could do something else. And that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I do wonder what he sees sort of in his future.
Well, and there's so few options, right?
There's not much.
In the state of Vermont, we have one congressional seat, and that's certainly
there hasn't been a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Right now, this year is probably more movement than we've had for quite a while since Senator Leahy's retiring. Right. We got to move. Everyone's sort of moving up and around and positioning themselves. But the governor is not going anywhere. It appears. Yeah. So that would be perhaps an obvious step for a mayor. It's difficult.
All right, we're going to find out what Mayor Weinberger has to say, and then we're
saying goodnight now.
We're going
to
say goodnight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
It was lots of fun.
Yeah, it was really great.
And thank you to everybody out who made this possible for us.
I mean,
and made it so easy.
We're out here in front, but I can tell you
minor players.
there are an awful lot of people here in the studio who have all been working really hard tonight. And again, Emily Brewer doing a great job with all those interviews, which just seem to be one right after another. And we really kind of had the easy job tonight.
We did.
So thank you all very much for joining us. And for all of us here at Town Meeting Television, have a great night.
Good night.
Share a few kind of open remarks, and happy to answer all the questions you have. On both the ballot item side and the council races, I'm feeling quite good about tonight's outcomes. The two voter decisions that will probably have the longest lasting impacts on this community are ballot questions number 3 and 4. Their voters signed off on approximately $50 million of investments in key priorities that this administration has been working towards for many years. Having this second major general obligation bond on top of the other bonding that we've done in recent years for our water infrastructure is going to allow us to complete the job that we began back in 2016 with the voter decision there to really change the trajectory of our public infrastructure investment in this community. This validation tonight of that direction means that we are going to be able to finish that job and make great progress with respect to our roads, our sidewalks, our city parks, our city buildings, and our public safety infrastructure. Ballot question number 4 may ultimately be even more transformative. I do think people are going to look back on the upgrade, the transformation of Main Street in very similar terms to the way we think of the Church Street Marketplace 40 years ago. We are going to completely rebuild the 6 blocks of Main Street from Memorial Auditorium to the train station, and in just a few short years, that experience of being on Main Street is going to be totally different than it is today. There's going to be opportunities for protected bike lanes, for outdoor eating, for natural beauty that we haven't seen on Main Street in generations, with outstanding street trees and landscaping that is both beautiful and protects Lake Champlain. This is going to be a complete overhaul of that key part of our downtown. With respect to the city council races, Democrats had a good night, certainly the best night we've had since 2019. We saw a first-time candidate in Ward 5, a ward that has been where the results have been getting closer and closer in recent years, win by an overwhelming amount, almost 1,000 votes, I think. We may pick up a seat, it's still too close to call, in Ward 7, with the margin there being, I expect there will be, I haven't heard this definitively, but I'm expecting there will be a recount there. And then the other contested races where Democrats didn't quite pull it out, we certainly saw a much closer race in Ward 8 than we'd seen in years. And even in Ward 1, where there is an extremely strong candidate in Councilor Hightower, we saw a race that was only separated by about 140 votes, something considerably less than we've seen in other Ward 1 races in recent years. So, you sum that all up, and to me, I see a message from voters of concern about the direction of the city council, a desire for a change in direction, and I certainly hope that coming out of this, we will have less of the polarizing debates that we've seen over the last couple of years, particularly in public safety. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have.
So with the tax increase failing, what does that mean for the future of, what citizens can expect from Burlington?
So what Catherine's referring to, of course, is ballot question number 2, vote on the general city tax by a narrow margin did fail. And And certainly we're going to, I really believe in the wisdom of Burlington voters. We're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to roll up our sleeves. Got the sleeves rolled up, and we're going to find a way through this. It won't be easy. This may be, in some ways, the toughest operating budget of any that I've been responsible for over the last 10 years. I think it may be that with the inflation that we're facing and whatnot. On the other hand, this administration has gotten through very serious financial challenges before. I think this is a challenge that pales in comparison to digging the city out of a near junk bond status, resolving the huge Burlington Telecom lawsuit. We will work hard. We'll find a way to ensure that our highest priorities get the funding that they need. We'll be smart about the areas that we do make cuts in. I can't give you a lot of details on where we're going to land tonight. We've got 4 more months before we will finalize that budget, but we will find a way through this. Again, I was certainly hoping and that we might have the support on all three. From my perspective, the fact that voters made yes votes for these long-term, about $50 million in commitments to long-term investments and priorities versus this $2.2 million one-year tax impact. This is, we were hoping to get all three. If we had to choose, this is the one that we're, I think, most able to manage and still stay true to our priorities, and we'll find a way through this.
And with the council balance staying status quo, should Burlingtonians expect more of the same division that we've been seeing over the last couple of years?
Again, I think it's too early to say they're going to say status quo. With the Ward 7 race is not determined yet, and that could be a pickup for the Democrats when that is sorted out. We'll have to see. The council is an independent body, their own elected officials. Certainly, I think the message from voters tonight is they're concerned about the direction the council is going in. We saw some very big shifts in the way we've seen these races go in recent years. I hope that leads to more collaboration, more negotiation, more finding a way through and finding a way to get things done, which is the way I've always tried to govern. We've never had but for I think there was 4 months in 2017 or something where there were 7 Democratic councilors. The rest of the decade, there's only been a plurality or not even a plurality of Democrats on the council. I've always had to work across the aisle, work with councilors of different parties to get anything done. That's the way I like to govern. I'm still interested in governing that way. I hope there'll be a council more willing to partner in that way going forward on these key public safety issues, which I think it's pretty clear the voters want us to find a way to address our public safety challenges head on, make sure we are still making progress on racial justice and racial equity issues, that we can do both of these things. I think that's what the voters want us to do. That's what I want to do.
What does this mean for the police chief search?